This meeting of the Starkville Board of Aldermen will now come to order. Please rise and sing of the Pledge of Allegiance to be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, you have before you a copy of the written agenda. Are there any proposed revisions to the agenda as written? Alderman Ball.
Mr. Mayor, I need to recognize the one change.
Alderman
Mr. Mayor, we have the colleague, a man from Jackson, a colleague of Mr. City Attorney, man, Mr. Parsons, I believe. What's his name, Mr.
Keith Parsons.
Keith Parsons, and I think he got to get back to Jackson. So, Mayor, if we could pull him up with he and Mr. Attorney, I don't think they're going to be real long on the report. If we could pull them up right after citizens' comments, so the attorney can be heading back to Jackson. We can move the report from the city attorney.
So you would bump that to item A under board business?
Yes, sir.
All right, proposed revision from Alderman Perkins is to bump the report from the board attorney on the certificates of participation up to item 10A. That would be the first item under board businesses, and to reorder the agenda to accommodate the change. Alderman Perkins, that's your proposed revision?
Yes, sir. That's all I have, Mayor.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none. Alderman Ball.
Yes, sir. Up on the Department of Business, on number 11, up on the planning. I'd like to move A to a consent.
All right, proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to move item 11.3A, the presentation by Michael Hogan, President of the MSU Student Association, requesting permission to hold a special event for Bulldog Bash 2013 and to have the city participation with in-kind services of $10,009.64 as presented to the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, it is.
Mayor, may I be heard on that?
You may.
Alderman Vaughn, they have not yet produced the insurance certificate for that event. Do you still want that to go on consent?
No, sir.
All right, there is no proposed revision. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revision?
On the planning B.
All right, proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to place item 11.3B, the approval of a .75 acre revision number 2 condominium plat for University Crossing Shopping Center on the consent agenda as presented. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, it is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Saying none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revision?
E, Finance and Administration, item 4.
All right, proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to place item 11E4, the report of receipts and expenditures for the period ending July 31st, 2013, in accordance with Mississippi Code annotated 21-35-13 on the consent agenda as presented. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revision?
On the Fire Department 1 and 2.
All right, proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to place items 1 and 2 under the fire department on consent agenda. Those are as follows. The authorization of permission to purchase fire gear off state contract at a total cost of $26,591.24 on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, it is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revision?
That was 1 and 2, right? Both of them? 2.
Oh, Alderman Vaughn also requests to place item 11F2 on the consent agenda, and that is the authorization to issue a commercial burn permit to the Starkville Public Works Department as presented. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, it is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revision?
Upon the personnel, number 3, request to approve and hire Melinda Johnson. There's a 20-cent difference in there, Mr. Randy Boyd. Is that one part showing 67 cents and one part showing 87 cents? Which one is supposed to be? On the personnel. One of them saying $23,523.87. One of them saying $23,523.67. So,
87 cents. I apologize.
okay. Approval with 87 cent, move it to consent.
And that was item number
3.
All right, proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to leave item 11H3 on the consent agenda with the change to the dollar amount as recommended by the personnel officer. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, it is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Saying none, that matter has been modified. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revisions?
No, I don't.
Do I hear any further proposed revisions from the members of the board?
Mayor,
Alderman Maynard.
under 11C, 11.3A, the presentation by Michael Hogan, we need to add to that and approval of the 2% budget.
Okay. Proposed revision from Alderman Maynard is to add to item 11.3A and approval of the 2% budget. Alderman Maynard, is that your proposed revision?
It is, yes, sir.
All right, do I hear any objection? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Saying none, that item has been modified. Alderman Maynard, do you have further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions from the remaining members of the board? Any further proposed revisions?
Mayor, may I be heard on?
You may.
City Clerk, would you like to address that school district tax issue? That is board business G.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Attorney. In conference with the city attorney this afternoon, we discovered that the statute that we're citing here calls specifically for us to adopt this at the first September, at the September regular meeting. I apologize for putting this on 2 weeks too early. If someone had a question on, relating to this matter particularly, I'd be glad to go ahead and answer that question, because it will be, what we'll put forward in 2 weeks will be unchanged. But the city attorney called my attention to the fact that this statute calls specifically for accepting the school district tax levy at the September regular meeting.
Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for FYI for the public, I'm always familiar with this, and we'll remove from the agenda after the question for the city attorney's recommendation. Mr. Clerk, just for the benefit of the public, tell me whether or not the millage increase that's being recommended by the school board is 62.96. Is that any increase from last year, or does it remain the same?
It is the same as last year, Vice Mayor.
Okay. And they're at 62.96 mills?
That's correct.
And how much is 1 mill for the public?
1 mil for the public in the city of Starkville is roughly $198,000.
Okay, and Mr. Attorney, you recommend that we remove that from the agenda in accordance with the statute. So, Mr. Mayor, I move that we remove it from the agenda.
A proposed revision from Alderman Perkins is to remove item 10G from the agenda. Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Saying none, that matter's been removed from the agenda. Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
No, sir.
All right. Any further proposed revisions from the remaining members of the board? Do we have any further? Alderman Little.
4A, add consent. And D with the correction.
Already on consent.
Okay, those are already on consent,
Okay, just,
and each of them accommodate any potential changes by the city attorney as they're on consent.
okay, there was one error on B. I was not present, did not vote at that budget meeting.
Had somebody already submitted that, or does that need to be made separately from your
That
team?
needs to be made separately.
All right,
My
so the
changes.
proposed revision from Alderman Little, do you have the item number?
I've got, it's going to be in the lead.
4B.
I've got it.
Is to modify the minutes from July 25th, 2013, to reflect that Alderman Little was not present for any of the discussions of the meeting
Did not vote.
and did not vote. That's the proposed.
That's correct.
Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Saying none, that item has been modified. Are there any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions? Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order. Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to approve the agenda as revised. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. You now have before you the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised has been approved. And that will take us to announcements and comments by the mayor and the member of the board. And I have a few tonight. One is not listed on the agenda, and that is an announcement that this Friday, August 23rd, we are going to be having a retirement ceremony for Lieutenant Malvin Daly and Officer Bubba Willard. That retirement ceremony is going to be right here, and it's going to be at 1400 hours. Would somebody help me with my military time? 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock in the courtroom. Refreshments will be served. Public is invited to attend. If you have some time available on Friday, please come and wish these guys well. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the new members of the Starkville workforce. First, I'd like to introduce Sean Asbury. Sean Asbury is originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and is a graduate of John Marshall High School. He attended Fayetteville Technical College in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where he received certification in firefighting 1 and 2. Prior to joining the Starkville Fire Department, Sean was a military police officer in the United States Air Force. He currently lives in Columbus and has recently worked at Lowe's and Walgreens. Sean and his wife, Michelle, are the proud parents of 3 daughters, Jordan, Liana, and Gianna. He enjoys spending time with his family, playing basketball, classic cars, motorcycles, and playing with his dog, Kaya. Sean is a member of Open Door Baptist Church in Cleveland, Ohio. Please join me in welcoming Sean. I'd now like to recognize Cole Boulware, who is originally from Hudson, Wisconsin, and attended Sprague High School in Salem, Oregon. He is a graduate of Mississippi State University with a bachelor's degree in sports administration and has an associate's degree as an EMTP from EMCC. Before joining the Starkville Fire Department, Cole worked as a paramedic for OCH Regional Medical Center. Cole is the son of Robert and Deborah Boulware. He has 2 brothers, Chad and Chase. Cole enjoys all sports, especially golf and anything Mississippi State. He attends Pine Lake Church in Starkville. Please join me in welcoming Cole. It is now my pleasure to welcome Russell Hamilton to the Electric Department. While Russell is coming forward, I will just share that Russell once supervised me at the Octiball County Co-op, so this is indeed an honor to have the opportunity to introduce him this evening. Yeah. It's my pleasure to welcome Russell Hamilton as the new Systems Administrator at Starkville Electric. Russell is originally from Starkville and is a graduate of Starkville High School. He completed 3 years in computer science before changing his major and receiving his degree in plant and soil science. He has been employed since 1996 at the Octiball County Co-op. Additionally, he has been a print shop designer for Clark Beverage Group. He also owns his own greenhouse operation where he roots and grows bedding plants for resale. Russell is married, and he and his wife Becky are the proud parents of 3 children, Gwen, Taylor, and Wes. He and his family are members of Knox Pater Baptist Church. In his spare time, Russell enjoys computers, hunting and fishing, greenhouses, farming, as well as spending time with his family. Please join me in welcoming Russell. So that concludes my announcements and comments this evening. Do we have any announcements or comments from the members of the board? Alderman Wynn.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I have some good news that I would like to share with you all this evening regarding economic development and some other developments that are about to take place here in our city. And I'm so excited that I was chosen to be the one to give this to you all tonight. Number one, we have Homewood Suites Hotels that will be joining our town, Beef O'Grady's, 300 Traditions Condos, the Cotton Mill Project located on Russell Street, Lost Pizza will be joining Middleton Marketplace, Marriott Hotels, the Farmers Co-op will be doing an expansion, Montgomery Apartments on South Montgomery, the cottages at Creekside, Bella Vista Condos will be doing some remodeling downtown, and Campus Haven will be producing 240 units here in our city. I'm happy to announce that to you all tonight. We're on the move. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I yield the floor with that good news at this time.
Thank you, Alderman Nguyen. Do we have any further comments from the members of the board? Any further comments from the members of the board? Seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. At this time, any citizen wishing to make comments this evening may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner. To our vice mayor, Perkins and Alderman Vaughn.
Thank you, Alvin.
Where's signing sheet?
I got it, Alvin.
We got to remember everything's out in the opening now. Nowhere to hide. The citizens have a few concerns. We have a problem at 136 our Northside Drive. We have a ditch that is backing up, and the resident at 136 Northside Drive is afraid of snakes in the backyard. We have the light the first light when you're going out toward Blackjack and that Ebenezer, the light seem like it do not change to green, and we don't want no one to get hit going out that direction. We would also like to have the handbook and the policy from the school board. School is in session, but it don't take but 1 or 2 things and everything go haywire. And that's coming from the NACP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments?
Well, Mayor, is he speaking about the light? Mr. Turner, you talking about the light that's before the interchange, before the roundabout?
Yeah, before the interchange, it's on red and people are be praying that change.
Okay.
So the sense might be messed up.
Any further citizen comments?
Good evening, Emmett Smoothman, Ward 5 now. First time to address this board. And just a few talking points this afternoon. And I'm concerned about the budget process and the revenue that we're trying to raise. I'd love for the board to take a look over the last 4 years and see where we spent the increased revenue that we've had the last 4 years. And are we being productive? Where these monies are going, where these funds are going. If we're not being productive, let's go back and make some changes. We should measure all performances to make sure that we are getting our money's worth. You know, how much, we talk about value, how much a value of a meal is increased. You know, currently we're at $196,125. That's when you throw in your car tags and all that. That's the value of a meal. And we're really fortunate to have that kind of value here in Starkville. You look around the surrounding cities, you see what the value of a mill will bring, and you realize why the millage has to be so much higher. Look at the growth. Look at what we're talking about tonight. New businesses coming here. That's one of the reasons they come. Low millage, high values, it brings people to Starkville. A 2.78% increase in millage is $545,000. We need to really take a look at it. We had increase in sales tax. We've had property gets reappraised. I think all property is going to be reappraised here this coming year. Significant increase from growth reappraisal. And you know, originally years ago when the municipalities got a portion of the sales tax, everybody was told, well, the millage should not have to ever change. Okay, you should be able to set the millage, live off of growth, live off reappraisal, live off increases in sales tax, and the millage ought to stay like it is. That encouraged growth. That encouraged people to come to Starkville. By raising millages, just the fact that you say I'm going to raise my millage, it sends a negative impact to anybody looking to come here. Just a quick, you just have to look around. Mayor, your campaign said we had 100 new businesses in the last 4 years in Starkville. Look at what it did to our Avalon. Look at what that did to our Avalon value. 2 blocks down the street, look at that new bank. Look at what that's going to do to your Avalon value. How much more dollars is going to be raised? You know, I always say we should be more productive at all times, and we ought to start with a zero budget, Scott. We ought to have to demand performance. We ought to measure results. We should have less employees today than we had 4 years ago if we're taking advantage of technology and we're doing the things that we should be doing. Everybody else is doing that. You've got to take advantage of that. Hey, I say on this new city hall, cut our losses. Put a stop work order in. Negotiate with a new set of attorneys. Negotiate and determine where we ought to be at. Take the losses. I throw that out to you. I think you ought to take a look at that. Sanitation fund. I got a real problem with sanitation fund. And that there's a proposal, I believe, to add $2 to that possible. Is that right? Is that kind of that being thrown out? But just assume $2. It's $2. We all pay $13 a day, I think. That's a 15.4% increase from 1 year to the next. We was able to balance it last year. Got to add 15.4% this year to balance it. I'm not so sure the landscaping division should be in an enterprise fund. I really not. I don't think everybody gets something for the landscaping division.
Thank you, Mr.
Hey,
Smith.
thank y'all.
Thank you.
Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments?
Good evening to everyone, to the board. I'd like to say, I want to raise my, time saying good evening to everyone by name, but I would just like to say to our mayor and to our vice mayor, you know I love all the rest of you. Okay, so we're gonna go on and I'm gonna say what I gotta say and be calm about it. Parker, you know, when you was elected, you said no new taxes. Well, the taxes on the, city, you know, what the city wants to build downtown is gonna be raised. Now, me, for myself, I can't afford it. You know, I just can't afford too many more taxes. We got school tax, and it's very important. I know these taxes are important or what we have to do, but for economic development, I would just like to say, now economic development must start here in Starkville because we don't have a lot of jobs for people. And I would just like to say, if we could, you know, focus on that and try to do that. But all these new taxes that are coming up, and we got to get out, get the military, everything like that. We don't need new taxes. We don't. And I would just like to say to all of you, you have been so kind to what you have been doing. And the rest gonna fall aboard. They're gonna get aboard and they're gonna come along regardless of what, because I believe in this board. I really do. I believe you can do, and you can sit together and do all that we have to do for the city of Starkville. But I'm just saying, let's get some jobs here. I know we got a general dollar coming, but we got so many on the floor, I'm tired, you know, I know they little jobs. We need some productive jobs so our people can have productive pay. And for the ones who may be whispering behind my back and, you know, and all that stuff, I just like to say, I'm still a citizen and I have a right to say what I want to say. And that's what I'm going to say to the board tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Do we have any further citizen comments?
I'm Jeremiah Dumas. I'm now a resident of Ward 7. So kudos to my alderman, Mr. Henry Vaughn. I'm here for two issues. One of which is I would like to make a formal complaint about Circle J contractors. 2 weeks ago, while my wife was parked at Henderson School on Pilchner Street, they threw a rock, busted out her window. The guy that was there was great, talked to us, apologized, was very kind, gave us the number. I actually called Taylor, asked Taylor how to handle this since it was a contractual issue with the city. Taylor has since tried to call the guy. We both have called him numerous times over the past 2 or 3 weeks, and he not only has called me, which is one thing, but when he doesn't call the person that he has a contract with is a whole nother thing. So I want that to be a formal complaint. I don't know the right legal term here, Chris, but I do appreciate this being a finding of fact whenever he presents a low bid again in the future. Secondly, I want to support your budget. I think one of the first things we see when we walk in as elected officials, it hits us in the face how bad our municipal facilities are. We see how underpaid our employees are, and we see the city services that we aren't able to provide that we hear about on a daily basis. We tried to raise taxes twice. 0.45 mils was a small increase, and when you look at what was done over the past 4 years, it was only 0.45 mils, which was minuscule compared to what we see and what we see that we need. I appreciate the fact that this is going towards compensation of employees. Sure, there's needed increases in our municipal facilities, but we see that need as you walk around this facility and as you look at other facilities. So I appreciate you looking at it holistically from that standpoint and not just using it as an excuse of the sins of our fathers types approach that I've been approached with, not by y'all but others. So I appreciate what y'all are doing. I appreciate the fact you're taking a hard look, and I've enjoyed watching y'all on Twitter and in the paper, and y'all look good from up here. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Dumas. Do we have any further citizen comment? Any further citizen comments?
Good evening, Sandra Sister, Ward 2. It's Old Alderman night. So I had two things, aside from breaking the computer. I had two things I wanted to talk about real quickly. I wanted to talk about the certificates of participation that will be used to fund City Hall. I want to encourage y'all to leave those as they are and go forward with that project. We have struggled over the last 20 years to try to address our municipal facility problems. This is a viable solution, and if you undo this, I don't know that there is another solution available. It also, undoing this jeopardizes our city finances and our ability to borrow. It also puts us in the position of potentially having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees and interest that the city will have nothing to show for. And then I want to speak about taxes too, and I'm going to land somewhere between Mr. Smitherman and Mr. Dumas. We all agree we have a very low tax rate. What we have seen over the last 6 years was a $3.5 million increase to revaluations. That caused our ad valorem taxes, our property taxes, to increase $1.5 million in 6 years. From 2006 to 2012, our ad valorem, or our property taxes, went up $1.5 million years. We recognize that our low tax rate limits what we get in city services and in infrastructure, and many of us support the idea that a tax increase is necessary. But we support that with the expectation that we will receive more services and better infrastructure as a result. I encourage y'all to go back, take a look at the budget that y'all are proposing, look at what's critical for now, look at what can be done in phases, look at what can wait. Know that you've got revaluation coming up next year, which is going to create probably $150,000 or more dollars, almost $1 million, just with that revaluation. So again, somewhere between no tax increase and what y'all are proposing. I encourage y'all to think hard about that and about the comments that you're going to receive from the audience tonight and over the remainder of the hearings about the budget. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask the former Vice Mayor a question?
You may.
Good evening, Mrs. Strong. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. What is your recommendation as to what we should do in phases?
One of the things that we had talked about when I was on the board was implementing employee raises. It was something that was important to us, and we had started down that path. We had commissioned the Stennis study. One of the problems that I think is inherent in the Stennis study is that the peer cities that they use ranged from cities here in Mississippi, which might reasonably be considered peer cities, to cities in Georgia and Texas, Florida, cities that are not our market area. So I don't know what the final numbers were in terms of how we compare to comparable cities. So I have not been privy to those kind of conversations, but we knew that we had a problem. We knew that we needed to address it, and we were looking at addressing it in phases as we had some growth. I think another thing that y'all have on your potential agenda for increases are a couple of positions in the police department. Chief Lindley made it really clear in one of the budget meetings that one of those he considers a critical need, the other is a need. And so he could potentially wait longer for one than the other. If you could delay some of the things that you're talking about, if you implement Chief Lindley's positions, one now, one midway through the year, you save some money from one year to the next. There are just several things that I think y'all could take a look at if you wanted to. It's hard to raise taxes. It's hard to raise taxes, and you're going to be pilloried for it if you do. So, if you do raise taxes, I encourage you to look at the services that are being provided here in our community, and look at some additional services that you can provide. Parks, y'all are looking at giving them $100,000. For all intent and purposes, an extra $100,000, essentially to meet their utility bill. The library has not had an increase in their revenues of any real merit for years and years. They've had to replace a roof this year that was an emergency because they don't have the funds to factor that in. They have old computers, and those are heavily used by a lot of the community that doesn't have internet or computer access otherwise. Look at the services that are being provided. Don't just let $500,000 to $600,000 get swept up and lost in operations. I think that's when people say, I'm opposed to a tax increase, they're opposed to that money just getting lost in some black hole of government spending.
Thank you, former Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Sistro. Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments?
All formers coming forward, just different positions. Lynn Sproul, I'm a resident of Ward 3. I wanted to be supportive of the tax increase. Over the years, I think the only flaw I have found in our tax increases have been that they've come in large chunks. We did one in 2008-2009 year, and it was 3.4 mils. When you have a business, it is extremely difficult to raise your rates, your overhead, to cover large chunks of tax increases. My rents are set as of August. I had no idea that we were going to be considering a large tax increase. I would hope there would be some, but a large tax increase of this magnitude. And so I can't recoup that. I've got a year. So if you would consider over your next 4 years small tax increases to allow the business owner, the small business owner, to take that into effect as they have their rents, have their prices, whatever, then I think that's a much better way to do it than going in large chunks. One other item I came to talk about is the certificates of participation. Having been on the side of the city and discussing with our bonding agencies, our rating agencies, our bond status, it has been extremely important to them that we have been stable and that we are willing to pay our obligations. Our certificates of participation have been bought. If we default on them, we have the potential of ruining our bond rating for the next 20 years. We will be disclosing that for years well past y'all's term in office. Please do not consider the certificates of participation. If they had not been let, this would be a valid discussion, but this discussion really needs to stop tonight. We need to be done with those as points of discussion, and we need to move on with what's been said, because you don't want to be on the other end of a lawsuit. It's a contract, and we've let the contract. So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thanks.
Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Brewer, I don't anticipate our attorney, just from a legal man, of course, I wait to hear from him, but I don't think that's gonna probably be a concern, but I don't speak for the board, but I don't anticipate the attorney's gonna recommend backing out of them, but, you know, but nevertheless, we'll hear from him later.
Thank you.
Do we have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? All right, seeing none, we have no public appearances tonight. That will carry us to board business, and the first matter that we have before us is a report from the board attorney on the certificates of participation. Mr. Attorney?
Mayor and board, I appreciate the opportunity to report on this issue, and if it pleases the board, I've got a handout I would like to give the board members so you can track some of the things I'll be saying. What you're receiving is a 3-page outline of my talking points tonight with the contractual documents that I'll be referencing if you would like to go behind that outline. But we'll be focusing on the first 3 pages, unless we need to do more. The specific question that I was asked or tasked with to report to the board was whether or not the board could rescind or revoke the certificates of participation pursuant to the certificate of participation resolution and supporting documents. Just to start at the beginning, very briefly, especially for the board members who are new, on June 5th of 2012, the board passed a resolution to issue these certificates of participation, otherwise known as COPs. And the exact title of that resolution was Resolution Authorizing the Lease of Public Buildings and Related Facilities, approving other documents relating to the lease, and authorizing certain action by officials of the municipality. The words other documents are key in that title because behind the resolution were several contractual documents that supported or undergirded the resolution. And those were the purchase contract, the ground lease, the lease and option to purchase, the agency agreement, the trust agreement, the assignment agreement, and the preliminary official statement. For purposes of tonight's discussion, 2 documents are relevant, and that is the lease and option to purchase and the trust agreement. And you have both of those in the bundle that I've provided you. Let's start with the trust agreement. The trust agreement is between Starkville and the trustee, who is the First National Bank of Clarksdale. Simply put, Clarksdale handles the money associated with this deal, the First National Bank of Clarksdale. And so looking at key provisions in the trust agreement, I wanted to point the board to section 7.01. It's titled City to Perform Pursuant to the Lease. And we'll talk about the lease in a little bit of detail in a minute. This section states the city covenants and agrees with the owners of the certificates to perform all obligations and duties imposed on it under the lease. Section 7.05 is titled Performance. It states that the city shall faithfully observe all covenants and other provisions contained in this trust agreement in each certificate executed and delivered hereunder and in the lease. Except as provided in the lease, the city shall not agree to any amendment to the lease that would either lengthen the term thereof or reduce the amount of base rental or additional rental payable thereunder, or change the time or times of payment of such base rental or additional rental, or agree to any other amendment detrimental to the rights of the owners being the holders of the certificates of participation. Section 8.01 goes on to define what an event of default is under the trust agreement. It states that the following shall be events of default under this agreement, and the terms events of default and default shall mean, whenever they are used in the trust agreement, any one or more of the following events. Number 1, or subsection A, an event of default as set forth in section 12 of the lease. And we'll talk about that. Subsection B, failure by the city to observe and perform any covenant, condition, or agreement on its part to be observed or performed under this trust agreement or the lease. So the next question is, well, what does the lease say about the city's obligation to perform under this deal? Section 3 is the key section. It's titled Rent, and it has various subsections that spell out Starkville's duty under the lease. Section 3.5 is titled No Rental Abatement, and it says, except as provided in Section 3.3, and we'll talk more about that section, the obligations of the city to make the payments required in Section 3 hereof, and to perform and observe the other arrangement on its part contained herein shall be absolute and unconditional. The section goes on to say, except as provided in Section 3.3, the city shall not diminish, suspend, or discontinue any payments provided for in Section 3 hereof, and those are the rental payments pursuant to this lease to the corporation for the building. Number 2, shall perform and observe all of its other agreements contained in this lease. And number 3, shall not terminate this lease for any cause. The lease goes on to define default in Section 11. It says, if the city shall fail to deposit with the trustee any base rental payment required to be so deposited pursuant to the sections, or fail to pay any item of additional rental as required, or breach any other terms, covenants, or conditions contained herein or in the trust agreement, or shall fail to remedy any such breach with all reasonable dispatch within a period of 30 days, then that will be an event of default under the lease. Now, based on all of those provisions, my opinion is that the contract documents that undergird the COPS provide the city no legal avenue to rescind the deal or revoke the deal. Now, you heard in the previous sections about Section 3.3, because it started off with that clause, except for Section 3.3, the city is bound in these terms. So we need to look at what Section 3.3 says. Section 3.3 is titled City's Obligation, and the first paragraph states that as the city deems the existence and operation of the project to comprise an essential part of its governmental functions, the city hereby covenants to take such action as may be necessary to include all base rental and additional rental due hereunder in its annual budget, and to make the necessary annual appropriations for all such base rental and additional rental until all principal of and interest on the certificates shall have been paid, or obligations of the city under the trust agreement have been satisfied and terminated. This covenant is specifically subject to the express limitation contained in the following paragraph. So as of that paragraph, that is consistent with all the other paragraphs in the lease agreement and all the other paragraphs in the trust agreement that says that the city must perform. The last paragraph, and after I read this paragraph, I'll pass the ball to our financing counsel to give an interpretation on this last paragraph, but it talks about appropriations, and it states the obligation of the city to make base rental and additional rental payments under the lease constitutes a binding obligation of the city in accordance with the terms of said lease, provided, however, so long as no default of any monetary obligation of the city has occurred, the city's obligation to pay any amounts due or perform any covenants requiring or resulting in the expenditure of money shall be contingent and expressly limited to the extent of any specific annual appropriation made by the city to fund such lease. Nothing contained in the lease shall create any monetary obligation on the part of the city beyond such current and specific appropriation. I know that was a lot of words, and I appreciate the opportunity to go through those provisions with you. And if it pleases the board now, I'll kick it to our financing counsel to talk about Starkville's rights, duties, and obligations with respect to appropriations.
I know that language in 3.3 is fairly difficult language. It's kind of language that gives lawyers a bad name for drafting things like that. But in our defense, it's really trying to follow a statute, section 31-8-9, that this proviso language comes out of that statute. So we're hard just following that. Here's what I think the big picture is. It helps us interpret the sort of back and forth language in here. What the lease purchase section was adopted to do was to give government entities a way to finance certain things without having them be full faith and credit financings. And what a full faith and credit financing is one in which the governmental entity can be required to levy a special tax in an unlimited amount, whatever is necessary to pay the debt. And what this section was intended to do was to give a level of financing that was below that in strength of the credit, that said, you know, on this financing, you can't be required to levy a special tax to pay the debt. So as Chris read, I mean, the first sentence here says that you'll include the base rental in your annual budget, and you'll make the necessary budget appropriation. So out of revenues that you're budgeting to come in, you're gonna put this cost in the budget. But then the next paragraph is saying that the obligation to pay is limited to the specific annual appropriation made by the municipality to fund the lease, and that nothing in the lease creates any obligation beyond the specific, beyond the current, beyond such current and specific appropriation. In other words, there's no obligation to go levy a special tax that, like you would have in a general obligation, where it's behind full faith and credit. And the last sentence of this paragraph ties that all, this section ties that all together by specifically stating this is not a general obligation, and the full faith and credit is not being pledged. So the kind of the practical bottom line is, if the city of Starkville has contractually agreed under this document to make these lease payments, and if Starkville does not make these lease payments, it will be a breach of contract. It will breach the legal contract and can be sued by the certificate holders, or actually the way it works, the trustee would sue on behalf of the certificate holders to enforce this provision. Now, in that claim, unlike with a GO bond issue, there could be no argument that you're required to go levy some kind of special tax to cover the debt. It would only be the amount that you were not performing by putting the amount that was due this particular year in the budget and then appropriating for that. So that would be one legal consequence of those payments not being paid. There's some other more broader comments, and I know of one particular situation, a lease purchase. It was not a building, it was equipment and so forth, where the municipality has declined to pay. Chris and I discussed what I should mention, just full disclosure, that is in litigation now, and our firm is representing the folks who are suing the city on that particular thing. But I guess the point there is I have done some thinking about what sorts of things you claim if somebody decides to default on a obligation like that. And besides the contract obligations and the kind of Mississippi state law, you do have two kind of big federal things to take into account too. One is these certificates and the interest on the lease are tax exempt. So that means people are getting to take that interest and not deduct it from their taxes. And there's a whole scheme of rules and regulations federally dealing with tax exempt municipal obligations. And one of those in particular that would be relevant to this particular situation is that you can't issue tax exempt obligations for a governmental project and then not do the governmental project, because or at least I say you can't do that. The IRS considers that a scheme to defraud, tax fraud kind of thing. They would investigate. You're at least going to have a serious issue there if you did not move forward with the project as to whether you had created tax fraud. So you have an IRS type issue. A little bit different fact pattern, but one of the big cases on that comes out of Mississippi, where in fact the attorneys involved went to jail in it. But it was a situation where bonds were being issued and then supposedly to finance retirement homes being constructed, and then nothing was ever done with the proceeds. And the IRS and the SEC and other people came in and declared that taxable and caused major problems. So once you issue, I guess the point is, once you issue tax exempt obligations to a governmental project, you're required to move forward with the project. And in the absence of that, you could have IRS implications. You could also have implications under securities laws. And just the reason I raise those, especially the securities laws, is one that can go beyond the specific, the municipality as an entity and get into officials and so forth. So you have both the risk of the municipality having securities law claims. In either event, the IRS, the SEC, state law claims under a contract, all those things are things that would cause you to have lots of problems. Now, you kind of, your ability to finance projects in the future and to do things financially would be, your bond rating would go down. We'd have to file what's called a material event notice that the SEC requires filed whenever there's a default on bonds. That's going to result in immediate downgrades. People aren't going to borrow anymore. In this case, a lot of these purchasers, these certificates are banks in Mississippi. So you're going to have, it's not like it's people way off. You're going to have people locally, you know you defaulted. So your ability to borrow again is going to be affected. So there are lots of adverse consequences that would flow from not fulfilling the obligations under the contracts under that Chris outlined. And I can elaborate on any of that or answer questions.
Mr. Mayor, Max, one question.
Alderman Burke.
Thank you. Thank you, council. Just got one question, maybe a couple of parts, only for informational purposes. Very specific question, just only for informational purposes. And I think hopefully it's a pretty good question. You, the expert in this. Can the city of Starkville delay, it's a two-part question, delay appropriating money for this municipal project for the upcoming fiscal year? And understanding we have two payments that's due for this upcoming fiscal year. We have about $118,000+ due December 1 of 2013. And in June 1, 2014, we have about $120,000+. You round it off to about $240,000. So my question is let me put this fact before I ask the question. So the other part, the budget currently has $370,000 earmarked for this upcoming fiscal year, and then after that, then the principal in 2015, the payment gonna be about $540,000 more or less per year. So going back to the question, can the city of Starkville delay appropriating money for the municipal project for this coming year? And if the answer to that question is yes, is there a construction fund that payment of $240,000 can come out of? So in other words, can we, with that question, can we still meet our legal obligation? And I know it's a policy question, but from your experience as counsel there, if the city delay earmarking at $240,000, let's just say we have a $307,000 line item, and you take $240,000 to do other things, is there a construction fund that we can use to pay the interest payment that's due on December 1, 2013 and June 1, 2014? There's a construction fund where that money can come from to make that interest payment for those two specific time periods.
Right. Let me just explain that all the money that we had cost of issuance, you pay the people to sell the bonds and other sorts of things, and then the net money, which was a little over $6 million, went into the construction fund. And the official statement we sent out to bondholders says that's going to be spent on the project. Chris had asked me if there was any, way that does this have to be this year? And so I looked at various provisions, and I think there's possibility, but I'm not ready to say that it could be done. What you can pay out of the construction fund are acquisition costs, and acquisition cost is defined in a whole long paragraph to be construction and buying property and whatever related to the project. But there is a sentence in that definition that says acquisition cost includes capitalized interest. Now, the capitalized interest, and so I know that part because it's right there in black and white. Here's the part I don't know or have concerns about with that, and I talked to one of my partners about it before I left, and we know it's a substantial issue. I haven't researched it lately. Capitalized interest is a term of art under the federal tax laws related to tax-exempt financing. And this may be more tax-exempt financing stuff than we talk about today. But basically, what the federal government will let you finance tax-exempt, generally speaking, is capital expenditures. They have very limited exceptions for short-term financing and very limited amounts for you to cover operating expenses. You have to be basically broke, and we do have some counties in the state that periodically issue short-term debt to cover operations. They meet all the tests to be broke. But if you're not that, you can't cover operating expenses. So one of the main things a bond lawyer has to do, a bond tax lawyer, is to look at an expenditure and decide whether it's a capital expenditure or an operating expense. Now, generally speaking, interest is an operating expense. But there are circumstances where it can be a capital expenditure, and I think a clear-cut case where it is like when you can have tax-exempt financings of like government-owned hospitals, for example, and there let's say you're building a hospital, and you're going to use the revenues from the hospital to pay the debt. But during the construction, it's not going to be producing any revenues, right? Because you can't produce revenues until it's constructed. So you can pay interest out of a construction fund in a hospital financing like that, and have it be deemed a capital expenditure because it's necessary to bridge the gap between the time the debt is borrowed and the time the facility becomes operational and revenues are being generated. Now, in this particular case, I think there's a substantial issue that would need to be looked at as to whether when you're not relying on revenues generated by the facility, the city hall is not going to generate revenues, or new revenues. Basically, your operations here will be your operations there. So we're not relying on the facility being constructed with proceeds to generate revenues, whether capital, that interest could be treated as capitalized interest and therefore a capital expenditure as opposed to an operating expense. I may have made everybody glaze over with tax and accounting terms there, but that distinction is very important because, back to the same thing about not doing a project, the one thing that we want to be careful not to do is to do anything that messes up the tax treatment of this and gets us sued, and then you have the IRS weighing in. You don't want some IRS action against the city of Starkville. So it's important to get that right.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask one thing further? And Mr. Counsel, I want to ask for just information purposes. Could you give an answer to Chris just so we'll know the answer to that question? I know basically you're unsure on the answers.
I am.
Okay,
I'll admit that I haven't. It's been a while since I looked at that. I'm familiar with that general principle from issues we've had in the past.
Could you give Mr. Latimer the answer so he can inform us? Or if you feel the need to, you just get it back to us in some appropriate means.
Okay.
Just so I know.
I'll do that.
Thank you. And how soon you think you get that to us?
Within a week.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
I have one question, and of course, I already know the answer to this, but for those that may watch this on TV or those that are in attendance, I want the answer to this question to be answered. And it is regarding the municipal complex documents. Number one, do we have in receipt a lease with contracting corporation? Number two, the advertisement for bond documents. Number three, the completed lease between the city and the corporation, and of course, the bank trustee agreement.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Yield the floor at this time.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Parson. The next matter on the agenda, we'll go back to the original first item. And
that is a request for approval of advertising the open engineering assistant position. Mr. Boyd?
Good evening, Mayor and Board. This is a request to fill a position that has been vacated by a resignation of an employee to return to school. Position is in our engineering department, and it provides assistance with engineering projects and services, reporting to City Engineer Edward Kemp. We have presented to you a proposed job description and classification for this to be included in our salary grade 14 with the title of Engineer 1. So request to advertise.
Just a second. Alderman Maynard?
The request is to approve the job description, the classification, and a request to advertise to fill the position.
Discussion.
Mr. Boyd, originally this was a grade 15. We got together and after looking at that, decided to redo that description and back it down to a grade 14.
Yes, and to be perfectly clear, the position as present is in our grade 13.
Okay.
Our concern is that if you look at the salary levels for our grade 13 position, we're concerned about our ability to attract and retain qualified candidates for this position. We had proposed it to be in a grade 15. After discussions, we've backed it down to grade 14. And that grade 14 has a salary range of $43,497 to a maximum of $57,889. The present person in the position is in at a salary level of $52,111, I think it is. I don't have that right in front of me right this moment, but $52,000 and change.
Alderman Maynard, were you finished? Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Snowden, that's the department head. You're the department head for this division here. And there's a range of $43,497, 48 to $57,889, 43. I want to ask you this question. What do you propose paying this person? Because if you put this person, if you hire this person at the top end, there are two department heads, in my opinion, who will be making less than this person. And I just have some philosophical discomfort in bringing somebody in this job, making higher than two of our department heads. So my question is, since we have this wide range, because we'll quickly be told, well, the board approved the advertising. And I've seen it over the years. So my question is, what is as department head, you're the department head, you supervise the engineer. So my question to you specifically is what is your recommended salary? Of what do you recommend to this board when we bring this person in? Can you, as to what we should hire them? I'm not trying to get an exact dollar, but could you narrow that range a little bit more as what you can anticipate asking this board to pay the person?
I can give you an honest opinion. It would depend on the candidate. Generally, in the past, we've not gone that much over midpoint. But in this case, I cannot give you, will it be max? No. I don't know the other two positions that you're referring to, Mr. Vice Mayor, I'm familiar with that. So I don't know that salary level.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
Further discussion.
Mr. Boyd,
Alderman Maynard.
do you see this position as being a position that would be suitable for an entry-level engineer coming in straight out of school?
I would defer that to City Engineer Edward Kemp. Edward, you may want to address that.
I think it potentially could be just the right person with the right amount of potential. That would be I would like, obviously it'd be preferred to have someone with a little bit of experience, so we don't have to do all the training. But for someone who has, like I said, a lot of potential, a lot of enthusiasm, the ability to kind of, to go up the learning curve pretty fast, I think that it could be that person.
Somebody with co-op experience.
Be great.
No more questions.
Any further discussion? Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Snowden, I hope we take under consideration that we do have department heads not at this top salary right here. I hope we don't. Normally, when we approve this, the first thing that this board have done in the previous, they will go straight to the top salary. I hope we don't do that. I hope we take under consideration by the department heads that below this top salary. So I hope we stay in the mid-range somewhere.
Yes, sir.
And not straight to the top.
Further discussion? We have no motion pending.
I'd make a motion that we approve the advertising for the open engineering assistant position.
Alderman Maynard has made a motion to approve of advertising for the open engineering assistant position as presented. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Little. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. Let's do it by show of hands. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. Thank you, gentlemen. The next matter on the agenda is the consideration of the intent to levy mills and discussion of the FY 2014 budget. Alderman Maynard.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. My recommendation, we instruct the clerk to advertise the intent to issue millage increase at 2.78 million.
All right, a motion has been made by Alderman Maynard to instruct the city clerk and finance director to take all appropriate steps to advertise and advertise a millage rate of 22.78 mils. Now, does that include our Main Street stuff? Do we need to get something special in for that?
Yeah, I would say all appropriate steps to advertise the budget with operational millage of 22.78 and all other special millages as agreed upon by the
State that for us.
Yeah.
And Alderman
Basically-
Maynard, see if this is the motion you were attempting to make.
It would be tagging on to what the mayor said, all appropriate steps to advertise operational millage of 22.78 mills with the, in addition to the other special mills previously levied. For example, that'd be the 2% for downtown district.
All right, so let me give one more stab at it. Motion from Alderman Maynard is to direct the city clerk and finance director to take all appropriate steps to advertise a general millage levy for the city of Starkville in FY 2014 of 22.78 mils, and also all other advertisements consistent with millage levies adopted in previous years. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
And Clerk, does that get you what you need?
Got it.
All right. Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Walker. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits?
Yes, sir. With all due respect to those that spoke earlier, we have been through the budget in detail. I'll 96 pages. We've looked at all obligations that this board has incurred. We've looked at future obligations that we know are coming down the line. It is my feeling that this is what's required for us to meet those obligations.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Maynard's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 4 in favor with 3 against, this motion passes. The next matter on the agenda is the presentation by Michael Hogan, President of the Student Association.
Mr. Mayor, I think the board from the, of course, we're glad to hear from I think the board was inclined, I didn't hear an objection table to support this if the insurance matter works out, but whatever it pleases the chair.
And he'll have a presentation on the insurance matter. If you recall, the university has a position on the insurance matter.
Okay, all right.
And Mr. Hogan's also here to present his 2%.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Hogan. Glad to have you here. Thank you.
And Mr. Hogan, I apologize for you having to follow such weighty budget discussions.
No, this was very interesting.
You've brought good news to us here tonight, so please share.
Thank you very much. If it pleases the board, I've got some handouts that might be helpful to follow along with. If I could pass them out real quick. Great. Thank you. That's your little note section too.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. I did not get to my position by being very creative with PowerPoint, so I apologize if this is not the most thrilling presentation of your night.
I try to get you off the hook.
I will attempt to make this as short as possible, but most of you, as aldermen who have served before, or aldermen that are aware of this event, Bulldog Bash has been going on for 14 years, and it is always our duty and a really great part of my job to come before you and ask to continue the partnership of approving this event. So I'll roll through just some of our basic details, and if you have any questions, I would love to answer them for you. So the facts for the event, we are attempting to get approval for October 4th, 2013, which is the LSU home game weekend. We have a title sponsor under C Spire Wireless. We have attempted or gained all of our top sponsors for the actual event, and on approval of the actual event, the City of Starkville and New South Weekend with the Planning Department will also be a top sponsor of this event. Our fanfare and dog rally are events that happen during the day that really attract kind of the family atmosphere of our event, where we have a new event called the Grill Off that's going to attract hopefully restaurants and griller connoisseurs that are interested in some healthy competition with a grill off located on Maxwell Street. On the concert side of things, it's from the 6 o'clock to 11:30. It's been the same thing, and our website is listed if you are interested in further details about that. The opener of the actual concert will be the Battle of the Bands winner, which takes place September 4th. The supporting act is Chris Young, who's a country artist, and the headliner is the Black Crows. In-kind services that the City of Starkville has provided us in past years and that we are hoping to have the approval of this year are as listed. If there are any questions about those, I would gladly address them.
Questions or comments for Mr. Hogan? Would you like to, or you or Mr. Burles, brief the board on the subject of the insurance and the university's position on it?
From my point of view, from what it was, is that we have gone to the insurance and stated the claim and asked for it. It's in process. From what my understanding is, Mr. Burles may have more information for you, but
They're not indemnified.
I got you. Okay, I'm sorry. I was confused on that one. So, but they're actually waiting it. I would recommend making it contingent upon the insurance approval. Do you want to briefly run through 2%, so maybe they can
Yes.
get it all in one motion?
Those are, you have all of this in your handout if you're interested. The 2% beverage sales tax, thank you for the continued support. We look forward to continuing this partnership, and listed in your packet if you cannot visually see this as well. This is the difference between our 2013 fiscal year. We have went up significantly, actually. We've got a little bit more money to play with. Some of the bigger changes you'll see, we have kind of trimmed the fat when it came to the night route. For an entire semester, we ran the numbers on our Thursday night shuttle, and at any particular week on the Thursday nights, we never saw more than 8 people ride that shuttle, and that was costing about $350 per person riding that shuttle. So due to the lack of interest on those Thursday nights, we have cut that down, and obviously you can see the significant cut in funds that we got to kind of save on and play with other areas. Also, a new part of the proposal is the $10,000 for the diversity programming. This would fall under the Holmes Cultural Diversity Center that is interested in beginning an annual speakers event in which they would draw a speaker to speak on diversity and draw a crowd that would really bring something different to our campus. So we're very excited about it and looking to help them start that fund by this. So if there are any questions, I would love to answer them.
Discussion. Alderman Maynard.
I would move that we,
Do you want to yield to Alderman
Yes,
Walker?
I'll yield.
Alderman Walker.
Mr. Hogan, thank you for the presentation. The only question I have here, I think the diversity programming for the Holmes Institute is great. One of the things that I would really like to see is this 2% money that goes, I think, to Mississippi State is a great thing. I would like to see a line item there where some of that is actually spent maybe towards a little bit of capital improvement that is actually in the city, especially in the area of where Bulldog Bash is, whether that's sidewalk improvement or sign improvement or better lighting. That's going to help make this event even better, and would also be taking some of that money and reintegrating it to make that scene between the university and the city even stronger. I think we have the opportunity to do that. And I think a $10,000 line item would be a nice little start to kick that off. So I would hope that would be something that we consider for this budget and as we move forward, especially as we continue to see the 2% money increase.
Thank you. Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate that. And that idea has come across our way earlier in this month, actually. And I do like the idea, and I think that is something that we would really be interested in working towards. As far as the proposed for 2014, with the discussions and conversations between all entities on the list, I don't know if we'd feel comfortable in changing it right now. Due to the financial year that they have already planned. So I sincerely hope that whoever comes after me sincerely takes that into consideration, because I do believe that's a great idea, and in some ways wish I would have thought about it beforehand, but I do appreciate that, Alderman Walker.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Just a couple of questions, guys, and I want to make sure y'all know I'm pro Bulldog Bash. I went to Nashville earlier this summer to watch the Black Crows, so to have them here in Starkville, 2 thumbs up from me. But it's my job to protect the city to the maximum legal extent that I can. And just to make sure we have all the facts on the record and for the board's informed consent, Mississippi State no longer agrees to indemnify the city of Starkville for this event. And it's a serious permit issued by the city of Starkville, because you've got a lot of college kids in a confined space and there may be drinking. You know, what could go wrong? So the insurance is vitally important for the city. And I called Galloway Chandler McKinney Insurance, who the city gets its certificate from, and they did confirm what Mr. Broyles is saying, that MSU sought that certificate today, and that there's a 3 or 4 day turnaround time for quotes. And so that's why there's no quotes and no insurance certificate tonight. The safest legal option tonight would be to postpone a motion on this issue until we have the complete packet in hand with the insurance certificate. A hybrid, which is not as safe, but we have done it in the past, is approved conditionally, as the mayor recommended, and wait on getting the certificate of insurance. And so it's the board's discretion how it wants to proceed tonight, but I wanted to make sure you had all those facts on the record before your decision.
City Attorney, is there any other group that we deal with that does not do indemnification or hold homeless? I mean, any other group that we, or is MSU the only?
MSU is the only one. They're in a little bit of a unique situation in that they're a public entity just like the city.
Yep.
And so they take the position that just like the city can't indemnify a vendor, they also cannot indemnify a vendor. I haven't been charged to go behind them and see whether that, gauge the strength of that position or not. I just don't know.
It's an Attorney General's opinion, double check made.
Can we
Alderman Vaughn.
Can we table this to the next board meeting? About that time, we should have all the documents and we can proceed.
That would not be my recommendation, simply because you've got a $120,000 event. Even though we all know at this table is likely to get approved, it holds some specter of doubt over the event and puts them in a terrible situation from a marketing standpoint.
What are your time cycle?
From what, actually, funny day, August 20th was what we've heard from several of our vendors and people that help us with the staging and barricades, and many of our people that we work for, or work through, excuse me, need to know rather quickly. And from what we've attempted to do, I do hope that there is a hybrid motion due to the fact that waiting another week can really increase costs, and having our budget set for what we have had given to us would be hard to turn around and try to increase those. So today would be great.
I think we had the same problem last year. What about the near future? Will we have the same problem? I think we had the same problem last year. When we went on insurance last year,
There's always a wait for insurance.
what can we do to relieve us from this problem so that we can go ahead and solve it?
We would love to come to you a lot earlier than the middle of August. We'd like to come to you in June with this, if we could. And then we don't have these time crunch issues every year.
Exactly.
Mr. Mayor, maybe briefly recognize?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna follow the recommendation of the attorney. Mr. Attorney, what's your recommendation?
I'll repeat it, which is the strongest legal option, putting policy aside, putting MSU's timeline aside. Just from a legal standpoint, it would be good to look at the whole permit package, including the certificate of insurance, so the board can sign off on whether or not the insurance shown on the certificate is sufficient.
And I'll just state my case again, since nobody else jumped in. We have had this event many, many times in the community in the past. It has been insured many times in the past.
Every time.
I believe Galloway, Chandler, McKinney has written the policy just about every time. I fully anticipate that the policy we will get from Galloway, Chandler, McKinney will be very similar to policy documents we've gotten in the past. And should I see any difference that is substantive in that document from prior year's documents, I will be the first one to put a hold on it and bring it back to the board. However, I do view it as a fairly serious event if approval is not granted tonight, because that pushes them into September without being able to say fully and completely that this event has the blessing of the city. Alderman Maynard.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we accept Mr. Hogan's proposal for in-kind services and also accept his 2% budget. The in-kind services would be pending insurance verification. Hopefully we have that as quickly as possible.
Alderman Maynard has made a motion to approve of the special event permit and in-kind services requested for Bulldog Bash, contingent upon proof of insurance provided satisfactorily to the city, and also approving the 2% budget for the university for the fiscal year 2014 as presented. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion? Yes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Walker. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I would like us, as requested, I know you attempted to come before this date and been delayed on several occasions. I would like us in the future to look and see if there's a way to do an interlocal agreement, so maybe we can avoid a lot of these issues as will have that done in the past. That's it.
Can we have the word?
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Let me help. I forgot to ask you one thing when the budget got approved on 4-3 vote. I know, no, thank y'all very much. Thank y'all very much. Thank you. Thank you. I know that at the one of the last meetings, the board made an instruction for the Sanitation and Environmental Services Director to get with the city clerk about considering, I think, a budget that was $1.50 increase and a $2 increase.
That's correct, Vice Mayor.
And I'm not clear that that motion that passed tonight addressed the sanitation department. I just want to know where are we on the sanitation department? We need to be clear, and I don't know whether that was included in the motion that was passed for sanitation and environmental services. I'd like to get some direction so I'll know where we stand. Because the budget has to be approved, in my recollection, by September the 15th. We meet again, I think, on the 3rd of September. So I want to know, did that motion address the issues for sanitation environmental services? If not, what are the plans for of this mayor and board to deal with the sanitation environmental services? Because I knew that there was a request. Of course, I'm not promoting it. I'm not going to vote for it, but I know there's some interest in a rate increase for residential customers for sanitation. I didn't hear anything tonight that addressed that. I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand anything. I want to leave here with a clear understanding as to where we are on the sanitation environmental services budget. So I'd like to know that. If it is not in balance, when is the plan to get it in balance? What action, if any, the board is going to take on the director, if any. So I like to know that. I'm sorry it slipped my attention when that motion was adopted. So if I could get some explanation on that.
Mayor, may I have a report?
You may.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The report you requested is on the back. It is in the packet, and it would be the cover sheet to the budget summary that you all have in here, and it speaks to the effect of a $1.50 and $2 increase in the sanitation budget. But the long and short of it is that even with those increases as currently presented, that fund is still out of balance and would require, I guess, either further cost cutting or just some further guidance from the board.
So, Mr. Clerk, so did the chairman's motion that was made to pass on 4-3, did that include, it wasn't specifically delineated, but did that include $1.50 increase in residential sanitation rates? If so, when do they go in effect? I need to have some clarity, so we won't be trying to sidetrack this issue. The public needs to know, and I want to know, where do we stand on it? Is there a rate increase or no rate increase?
In the motion that I have recorded, Vice Mayor, there's nothing for the sanitation rate increase.
Okay.
Alderman, that motion, there's been no discussion this evening on sanitation by the Board of Aldermen.
And it isn't friendly, and not adversarial, Mayor. I'm just trying to find out, just as a member of the governing body, so the department's out of balance. Are you planning on going next fiscal year with it being out of balance, or do you intend to bring it up on September the 3rd? Or y'all gonna try to summons me back up here for a long night hall for a special call meeting? I need to know that as a member of this governing body. What is this plans of this mayor and board to do with the sanitation rates? You either gonna vote for it or not. If not, how you gonna balance it? What are the plans for the sanitation? Because that budget has to be approved at the same time the other. So why take them one motion tonight and approve the general fund and obviously all the other departments, but sanitation's not addressed? So that's my question: where we stand, and when does the board? And Mayor, I'm asking you this, and just you, the chief executive officer, not adversarial, but just trying to find out what the plans are.
Sure, and let me take the blame for that matter not being discussed. It just slipped my mind, and I moved straight past it. So we do need to bring some sort of action on that tonight. Alderman Maynard, would you like to lead that discussion?
Absolutely. Whether it's tonight or the next meeting, we will have to bring it together. As we have discussed in previous budget meetings, we know the general fund has been having to subsidize the sanitation fund over the past few years. know it's out of balance. We also know that coming up December 1st, we have a $180,000 balloon payment due that we're going to have to address. And that's just a fact. When Ms. Emma presented her budget, she presented a couple of options. One was that for her to get into balance at that point, she was looking at a $3 sanitation increase. We know it's probably not the will of this board to increase sanitation fee $3. I don't believe it would be my will to increase the sanitation fee $2. I think the most that I would be willing to go to help Ms. Gandy get that budget in balance would be $1.50. But at $1.50, it's still not going to be balanced. We still have several issues that we're going to have to address. The elephant in the room is the $180,000 balloon payment that's due. Hopefully, we'll have some options on that. One option may be to sell those vehicles, cover the cost of that balloon payment, and back up and take a look at the sanitation department top to bottom. We've talked about cost of recycling in our budget meetings. We've talked about the $160,000 cost for garbage bags that are distributed in our budget meetings. We've talked about the fact that fuel costs are rising and diesel costs are very high. There may be some options out there to come back with a fleet that is propane as opposed to diesel, saving us quite a bit of money in the long run. The state requires us to put a budget together fairly quickly. Ms. Sistrun's suggestion tonight of zero-based budgeting is a wonderful idea, but you can't pull it together in 4 weeks. It takes planning. My suggestion to this board would be that we look at a sanitation increase of $1.50 and then come back and take a strong look at how we can improve cost efficiencies in the sanitation department in order to come back with a balanced budget, because it's going to require still some cuts. One of the things that is in the general budget that we looked at, we've moved the compliance officer from under sanitation. Mr. Smitherman's early comment of landscape being under the enterprise fund is duly noted. And that decision was made prior to this board, but it's something that we may have to go back and look at and see. As I mentioned earlier, the budget is 96 pages. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of current obligations. There's a lot of future obligations that the majority of this board have not voted on and were decided before we came on board. That's not unusual. Every board faces those things. Every new board has to deal with that. And we are dealing with it, I hope, in the most prudent effort that we can. Alderman Perkins, that is my recommendation.
Is that a motion?
I would submit that as a motion, yes, sir. That
Alderman.
sanitation fund be increased by $1.50 for residential.
And to instruct the finance director and the director of the Department of Environmental and Sanitation Services to continue to work together to provide a balanced budget. Yes, sir. All right, motion has been made by Alderman Maynard to direct the Director of Finance and the Director of the Department of Environmental and Sanitation Services, Sanitation and Environmental Services to work with a $1.50 proposed increase in sanitation rates to present a balanced sanitation and environmental services budget for fiscal year 2014.
2014. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Little. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits? Discussion. Alderman Vaughn.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate if the board and the chairman would table this and we come back and have another special meeting on nothing but the sanitation, so we can put the sanitation in line. I don't think we need to make this drastic decision now. I think we need to table this motion and have another special call meeting.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to table the motion. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 4 in favor with 3 against, this measure, or excuse me, by a vote of 3 in favor with 4 against, this motion fails. We'll go back into discussion on the main motion. Further discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Perkins.
just for clarity of this motion, which is not totally clear, but what is the effective date of the increase?
That is true. It needs to be tagged with an effective date because unlike taxes, a fee increase can roll on at any time.
October 1st.
All right. So this would run concurrent with the fiscal year. Further discussion. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Alderman Maynard's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 4 in favor with 3 against, this motion passes. The next matter you have before you on the agenda is the request for approval of the claims docket for the fire department as of August 16th.
I'm gonna accuse myself, Mayor.
We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to exit the room. Discussion. Discussion on the fire department claims docket. Need a motion.
Move approval of the fire department claims docket, August 16th.
Motion has been made by Alderman Walker to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for the fire department as of August 16th, 2013. Alderman Walker, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second? Motion has been seconded by Alderman Little. Alderman Walker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 By a vote of 4 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. Could somebody get Alderman Carver so that he can re-enter the room? The next matter you have before you is a request for approval of the claims docket for all departments except for the fire department as of August 16th. Discussion.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Walker to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments except for the fire department as of August 16th as presented. Alderman Walker, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Walker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is the request for approval, Alderman Little will recuse himself for the next matter. That matter is the approval for the City of Starkville claims docket for Dutch lubricant. Discussion.
Can you explain this?
He has a family member that is employed by him.
Not him, I was just saying, would you explain this what this pertains to?
The reason it's broken out, it's normally
Right.
general claims docket stuff for vendor services,
It's just,
but it's broken out because he has a family member that is employed.
His wife calls on the city of Starkville for that business.
Make a motion to accept.
Motion has been made by Alderman Maynard to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for Dutch Lubricants LLC ending August 16th, 2013 as presented. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion? Do I hear a second? Motion's been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
By a vote of 4 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. done it.
We should have added it to
Yeah, it's not executive session.
the, no, it's
so.
not exact, it's just
All right.
minutes.
Do I hear a motion to amend the agenda to add the minutes that were presented at the table?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the agenda be amended to include the minutes for consideration regarding the City of Starkville FY13 CDBG public hearings, a meeting on the Starkville Sportsplex on May 5, 2:30 p.m.
Alderman Perkins has made a motion to amend the agenda to add minutes from the City of Starkville FY 2013 CDBG public hearing on May 5th, 2013 at the Sportsplex of the agenda. Alderman Perkins, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Perkins, you speak on the matter.
No, sir.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Saying none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Do I hear a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Walker to adopt the 2013 CDBG public hearing minutes as presented. Alderman Walker, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Vaughn. Alderman Walker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Alderman Perkins.
That concludes our business for tonight.
It does.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn this meeting until the third day of September of 2013 in this boardroom.
Alderman Perkins has
5:30.
made a motion to adjourn until September 3rd, 2013 at 5:30 in the courtroom at City Hall at 101 East Lampkin Street. Alderman Perkins, that's your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. We stand adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Snow first.